on beads, on on pearls. We have a set of beads. We're chanting that. We are then they will simply reciting. It's a meditation everyone can practice. It's a very simple meditation. Simply repeating the Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Just sit and repeat that. And us who are trying to practice on the initial level, we do that something like 2 hours a day, and then one will discover it. So it should be so simple. It's just just pronounce the mantra and listen, and don't think of anything. Just listen. That's all for 2 hours. And one like it's practically impossible. The mind is flying all over, and sometimes one is thinking about this for minutes, and the mouth is going on, the sound is there, but one is not even hearing it. I found that it's actually amazing the mind can be like that. So one discovers mind is wild, and that one is constantly fixed on Krishna all the time is actually a very high level, really high level. Then what to do? Then Krishna gives the next here in text 9. If you cannot do that, because Krishna is very practical, he knows that. He's not. That's another thing Prabhupada writes in another place. Krishna never suggests anything impractical. It's others can give us impractical suggestions, but God Himself does not come with something impractical. Well, maybe certain things are impractical for me, but then He has also instruction for me. He has an instruction for everyone at whatever level we are at. So Krishna here is very practical. He says in text 9, Tajitam samadatum najagnoshi maistiram abhyasa yogana tato mam ichaptum dhananjaya. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So there, Krishna, now he's referring to, if one cannot simply spontaneously think of Krishna constantly, 24 hours, every moment, constantly, then one's life should be regulated and disciplined. And one should follow a scheduled life. One should become a disciple who's following a discipline and disciple go together. The word disciple comes from discipline. It's one who practices discipline in life. And that means one has to regulate one's life under the guidance of a guru, a spiritual master. We follow instruction of Srila Prabhupada and his followers, and they gave Srila Prabhupada gave a regulated life, beginning with getting up early in the morning, taking a shower, put on clean clothes, attending Artik, the morning ceremony, chanting rounds, even though whether one can fix one's mind or not, one chants a fixed number of japa rounds, which take 2 hours or more, and one follows, principles, things that are forbidden, things that one shouldn't do, and whole one's day is scheduled. So even though one may not spontaneously engage in Krishna service, but one by regulating, disciplining one's life like that, then one is always engaged in Krishna service. And then, after practicing this for a period of time, maybe for some months, or some years, or some decades, or a lifetime, or a couple of lifetimes, whatever, one comes to, and actually one is simply spontaneously always thinking of Krishna. So that's the next level. But then Krishna says here, but if you cannot do that, because not everyone is able to discipline his life just like that, then he will say here, you can just work for me. This is text 10, which I want to read. Abhyase pyasamato si mat karma paramo bhava mat atam apikarmani kuram sitim avashasi. If you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me you will come to the perfect stage. Now I'll read the purport here by Srila Prabhupada. One who is not able even to practice the regulated principles of Bhakti Yoga under the guidance of a spiritual master can still be drawn to this perfectionist state by working for the Supreme Lord. How to do this work has already been explained in the 55th verse of the 11th chapter. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulated principles of Bhakti Yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization and labor. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor and some organization to expand, so the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness. Or he can help with publications. There are various fields of activity and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one rise to a higher state of love of God, whereupon one becomes perfect. That was Prabhupada's purport here. And so we see actually, now we're getting very, very practical. We're getting very, very practical. If we are, one reason may be we cannot practice complete discipline of devotional life at Bhakti Yoga because one is involved in the material world, one has responsibilities, one has a job, so many obligations are there. Well, then just continue doing that, but doing it for Krishna and engage whatever one can in assisting Krishna's service. Then one will come to a higher state of love of God and become perfect. The point is, it's not Krishna does not say this, and Prabhupada does not write this, because it's really something that Krishna needs anything from us. He's asking us that we should give to him. Actually, everything we have should be given to Krishna, which means in this world it means giving everything to Krishna's devotees and assisting Krishna's devotees in whatever way one can. Not because Krishna is in need. Krishna is already the richest, he owns everything. So not that he, in that sense, needs anything from us. But by us serving him and giving to him, we develop love of Godhead. We actually develop love of Godhead. That is, because love again means service, it means giving. So if one wants to develop love for Krishna, for God, one has to get in the habit of giving. Not just taking, but giving. Therefore also, when Srila Prabhupada started the Hare Krishna movement here in the West to begin with, and that was in America, in New York, and he started a small temple, which was in a small shop, in a store, on a very busy street, very small facility. And then young people started coming, and many young people started coming, and one of his first instructions was, because they had an altar, and then he said, whenever you come, you should bring something as an offering, as a gift. You should not come to the temple empty-handed. You should always bring something. It can be very costly, it can be very simple, but bring something. If nothing else, pick some flowers, give some flowers, give a donation, give 2 liters of milk, for example. It's fantastic. Thank you. And just give something. Get in the habit of giving, and one will experience, actually, that's how one awakens one love for Krishna, by always giving. That's what this verse is about. let's get in the habit of giving, of serving, of assisting as much, and we're not talking about something unrealistic, with what we can. You know, it's if it's Prabhupada, he refers to another purport in the 11th chapter, where he talks about that, you know, okay, if one is a very rich man, has lots of money, instead of making a big building for yourself, then build a temple for Krishna. Build a big temple for Krishna. Use your millions and build a big temple for Krishna. But then he said, but if you cannot do that, because you may not be a rich man, you may be a poor man, well then go and clean the temple. Or, you know, if you have the land, grow some flowers, offer them to Krishna. Whatever you can, do something. It's not that. It's once you simply do what one can, but also once you can hold back. Once you give what one can, according to one's ability, and engaging this in Krishna's service will help one to come to a higher stage. One will naturally become attached to Krishna. One becomes sympathetic to Krishna and Krishna's devotees. One will, if one has, you know, one point will actually come to, it doesn't mean that one has to come to the point also where one is constantly thinking of Krishna, and one has to also come to the point where actually one can discipline one's life. But if one, for practical reasons, or even like just, you know, one is simply conditioned in a way so one cannot be very disciplined, one is just too restless a person to be disciplined. But this, by serving and assisting wherever one can, then one will come to the point where actually one will be elevated, also, you know, internally purified, and become more peaceful, more able to control one's mind and senses, so one can actually start practicing a discipline of, for example, chanting a prescribed number of Hare Krishna mantras every day, and so on, and, you know, come to the higher level. It's very, very practical. That's one thing that has to be always emphasized. Sometimes, because at least in the West, I mean, those of you who have an Indian background know it's not like that. But sometimes here in the West, many have the idea that Hare Krishna means some full-time, very few young people who are dancing on the street and who simply have dedicated their complete life to live as devotees in a temple or like that. That's, of course, it's a fantastic way of practicing devotional service. But that's, but to think that that's the only way to practice devotional service, or that, you know, and those who cannot, they have if one cannot live as a renunciant, monks or whatever, then one cannot be part of this, of Krishna's service, Krishna's movement. That's wrong. It's for everyone. It's completely for everyone. It's not actually the external situation is not the is not what is the condition or the requirement. It's actually what internally. Anyone who's always thinking of Krishna and never forgetting him, and trying to do whatever he or she is doing for Krishna's satisfaction, and trying to adjust one's life as much as possible according to Krishna's desire and Krishna's service, is engaged, is part of Krishna's movement, is part of this whole, is practicing this whole process. There is no, I mean, devotional service does not depend on any external circumstance. It depends on one's willingness to do it, one's desire to actually do it. And which means, in any situation, it's simply being where one is. That, you know, there's a famous discussion between Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Krishna himself, who came again 500 years. He was here 5,000 years ago. He came again as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and spread this chanting of Hare Krishna all over, first all over Bengal and then all over India. He's actually our original founder of this Hare Krishna society. And he had a discussion with another great devotee, great soul, Ramananda Roy, where he asked Ramananda Roy, what is the perfection of life and how does one achieve it? And Ramananda Roy gave different suggestions, but Lord Chaitanya said, no, that's not correct. And then Ramananda Roy, he said, he gave a suggestion, and that Lord Chaitanya said, this is correct, this is the correct answer. And Ramananda Roy said, you should just stay where you are, don't change your situation, but just start listening to talks about Krishna. Just start, hearing about Krishna, and then rendering service from whatever position you're in the best you can. Just stay where you are and try to understand what this whole Krishna consciousness is all about, and start practicing it where you are, and then as much as you can expand it just from where you are. Lord Chaitanya gave the same instruction to many when he was walking. That time travel, of course, was done by walking. So Lord Chaitanya, for 2 years, he was traveling all over South India, just walking from village to village, visiting the whole South Indian area. And many wanted to follow him. There were many men, family men, who thought that I want to. Lord Chaitanya is such an amazing. He's Krishna himself, but he came as a great spiritual teacher, and people were so attracted to him. So constantly, men came up to say, I want to leave everything, I just want to follow you. And Lord Chaitanya always answered, no, I don't want you to follow me, I want you just remain where you are, but stay at home, stay where you are, just continue life as always. And but you study Bhagavad Gita, you chant Hare Krishna, and you just teach it to others. You just give it to others. And by doing that, I will always be with you. You'll never be bereft of my company. And that's also what Krishna is talking about here. Simply, it doesn't depend on external circumstance. Of course, if one has a very, might say, sinful occupation, it's advised to change. If one is a butcher, change it. We cannot be butchers for Krishna. But if one has an honest means of livelihood, that's one of the things. One should simply have an honest means of livelihood, be an honest, upright citizen, and don't change that. From there, just practice Krishna consciousness, study Bhagavad Gita, study Srimad Bhagavatam, assist devotees as far as possible, of course, find out the association of devotees as much as possible, and then just give it to others, by example and by speaking to whomever one can. One should, the greatest way of expanding, or we talk about preaching Krishna consciousness to others, and that's often, when one gets in touch with Krishna consciousness, one gets a desire, I want to give this to others because it's such a nice thing, such a fantastic thing, and you want actually, if you have a nice thing, you like to share it with others. But then also, one often finds it's not easy, because people don't want to be preached to, and I don't, probably including me. And actually, one sense it's not natural, but we're living in a world where so many cheaters and so going on, so many have tried to preach to us and save us from this and that, so actually we become quite cynical and skeptical, and we just immediately block when someone wants to teach us something. Which is not natural. It's an intelligent person and will actually think, I should be open to anyone, and if someone has maybe someone has some nice, I can learn from it. And if it's not nice, I'll just say no, but at least should be open. But very often one finds others are not open. But then the best, great way of attracting and making us interested in practice of Krishna consciousness is simply if one practices himself, and is a very good example of practicing Krishna consciousness. And just showing, not by speaking, but by showing one becomes very happy, satisfied, peaceful by practicing this. Then one can see this is actually something substantial. It's not just some big words and some hot air, but actually there's some substance here. You know, you can actually see that he or she has actually really something, and then that will make others open. That's one way of actually giving to us, just by the example. And also, but of course, there are also many who are open. One will get intelligence if one is sincere about practicing Krishna consciousness and sincere about giving it to others. Krishna is in everyone's heart, and he will give intelligence how we also can be used as instruments to give it to others. That will, if we, you know, Krishna is there in the heart, he reciprocates. He'll give us intelligence if this is what we really want. But Bhagavad Gita is an extremely practical book. It's important to understand it's a book about spiritual practice, how to achieve the highest spiritual realization, but it's completely practical. And of course the example is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself. Arjuna is a warrior, he's on the battlefield, and he thinks that this is just material, this is just Maya, this is just illusory, I should give it all up, I should not be involved in this fighting on the battlefield. And I should go and become a spiritualist. I should go to the forest and practice meditation and not be involved in all this. And Krishna says, no, that's not. You should, you're a fighter, and you cannot go against your nature. Now you're doing something which is completely unnatural for you. So, and you could not suppress your nature like that. Even if you refuse to take part in this battle, you will get involved in battles anyway, because that's just your nature. You cannot help it. So you cannot run away from your nature. Therefore, this is not the process. You should simply don't change it. Right now you are in the middle of a battle. You remain here and you fight this battle, but instead of fighting for your own gratification, now you fight for me. I want this battle to take place. I want to use you as an instrument in this battle. You fight for me. And this way, you will attain complete perfection in this life and eternally. And that, you see, that this is practical. For Arjuna, it's very practical to fight. For everyone else of us, it's also very practical to act according to our nature and to engage that nature in Krishna's service. It's actually something we can do. Bhagavad Gita is very practical. So that is what we're hearing here in the next verses. If we think we cannot even work for Krishna, then Krishna has other suggestions for those who cannot be sympathetic to him. But I don't think that's not, anyone who's here must have some sympathy towards Krishna. But maybe, maybe if someone might belong to what they see as another religion. Of course, there's not other religions. There's only one God. There's only one religion under different guises. But one thing is, no, I cannot take part in something Hindu or Indian or something like that. Krishna says fine. Then he has also instructions for if one is on that level, and even there's different. Krishna gives different practical suggestions. But this one is very relevant for most of us. We, from where we are, we can, as much as possible, try to work for Krishna, support Krishna's service, whatever we can, and that will bring us to an actual perfect love of Godhead. Yeah. So there's time for 1 minute for one question. Anyone has one question?
When we practice devotional service, do we have to do it intently all the time with full like power, or can we kind of like switch off sometimes and not be fully?
I mean, it's devotional service practice on the. I don't know if everyone could hear the question. Rune is asking, does it does one have to be with full-on power all the time, or can one kind of sometimes be fully in devotional service and sometimes a little off and like that? Was that a question? One can, of course, the real platform is all the time. But if we are not able to practice that intently, with that intensity, well, then the point is, then we either regulate our life, sadhana bhakti, like we previously, and follow that. Can we not follow that, then we find a level where we can practice, and we work for Krishna to as much as we can, and we do what we can. We don't use that maxim for being lazy, but we actually do what we can, and by doing it, the practice purifies us, so we'll be able to become more and more concentrated. Over time, it can take years, it can take most of the life, but one will be advancing. One will advance. But we have to come to the point where it's all the time. I mean, there's no way around that. That has to come. That is, as long as we're not able to practice all the time, then we are still materially conditioned souls. But there's a way out of that, and that is to do whatever we can as much as possible. Yeah, I think we'll have more time for questions at 6 o'clock in the other building. Now we will have Kirtan with who's that leading? It was Vasavistara. Prabhu, you lead? Why don't try speaking? Please, Brother, come and lead. Jai.